Yeah. Many of you maybe saw the news report a week ago of a pedestrian that was struck by a car, and a few days later that person passed away. That's the husband of this friend of Jana's. So Jana's been trying to be an encouragement, and it's certainly a very challenging situation for that wife and children. And Jana has some heartfelt experiences with that, and able to give her some advice and counsel. So pray for that wisdom. Good, Jana. God bless you. All right, let's go to prayer. It's so good to see you all. I'm glad you're here. And John Conner, would you mind just praying for us as we begin this morning? Yes. Amen. Thank you so much. All right, our Bible study today is in the book of Numbers, chapter 33. We've been in this exciting book and looked at some exciting lessons now for 6 weeks, and this will be our last lesson in Numbers, and then we'll be launching into Deuteronomy, which is another very important book in the Pentateuch. So that will begin next week. In the book of Numbers, chapter 33, we're approaching the end of the 40-year period of wandering. What a hardship this has been, but they brought it on themselves. They had the opportunity 40 years earlier to obey God, follow His promises, and go in to conquer the land of Canaan, that was the land of promise. And yet, because of the evil report, they were not able to participate. Did that circulate through the middle section? Okay, good. All right, all full. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Paul, I saw you eyeing my pen, but you didn't take it. Wow. Thank you, Dennis. Really, that was going to be a point of illustration I was going to use right there. I was going to say, have you ever gotten a gift and not opened it? Have any of you ever had a gift and set it aside and didn't look into it? Not anybody have ever had that? Hawk? Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, well, that's okay, good. My point of asking that, I thought maybe there'd be a few more examples of something like that, but most of the time that's what we understand. When a promise is given, a gift is given, it's usually accepted and eagerly opened, right? All of us that have had kids have gone through Christmas to see the excitement of the kids as they passionately open their gift, only to throw it down and go for the next one. Were your kids like mine, that they got more excited about the box sometimes? Made toys out of the box? Okay, maybe mine were just odd, but they grew up and they put away childish things and became men. Okay, man, got out of that. But here in the book of Numbers, God has made all the way through the Pentateuch and this 40-year period of wandering, God has made promises. And the promises that we're going to look at are almost the gift now that is going to be realized. They're finally going to accept what God promised them many, many years earlier, that he was going to give them this land, that all they had to do was claim it. And so we come to Numbers chapter 33, and it's a very interesting time where I'm going to invite you to jump all the way to verse 50 in Numbers 33. We could read the first 49 verses, but it's really kind of interesting because it lists all of the places that they had stopped at during the 40-year wilderness wandering. There's actually 42 different locations that the Bible tells us about where they had stopped or at least passed through on their journey. And you'll remember right at the beginning, they went right through the Sinai Peninsula up to Kirjath Arba, Beersheba, southern border of Canaan, and that's where the spies went in. And then when they gave their bad report and all the people said, we can't do it, they went back into the Sinai Peninsula, and these 42 locations are all around Sinai. In many places, we don't even know where they're at. But it lists showing the accurate record keeping of all of these periods of God working. But all of these places are listed as stops along the way. Well, now they've come up to the east side of the Jordan River, up on the Transjordan, the high plateau that overlooks the Jordan River and the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, and you can see over into Canaan, the whole land from the Transjordan. And they have defeated two very significant, strong, powerful kings. Does anybody remember the names of the two kings they've already defeated? Og and Sihon of the Amorites. So these kings, I'll tell you what though, these Amorite kings were so strong that all of the Canaanite people were afraid of them. And then when Israel comes in and God providentially helps them completely destroy those Amorite kingdoms and kill the two kings, that really scared the Canaanites. We know that from Joshua chapter 2, when the two spies go in to spy out Jericho. Who's the lady they encounter there? Yeah, Rahab. And Rahab says a whole bunch of things about how fearful they have been for the Israelites. And part of what she lists that made them really afraid, they're in Jericho, the strongest walled city of all of Canaan. And she said, but our hearts melted within us when we heard what your God has done, including killing King Og and King Sihon and taking over that whole land over there. We've been petrified because she knew of their strength and the fact that Israel so easily conquered them. All right, so that brings us to chapter 33 and verse 50. And we're going to read some verses here and then transition just a little bit into chapter 34. But the point is this. God is giving these final instructions of how they're going to conquer and how that the land is going to be divided up among all of the tribes. All they have to do is obey and claim the promise. It's like the gift. So far it's been unopened. Now, when was all of this promised as far as the land of Canaan? When was that promised to the children of Israel? Yeah, all the way back to the patriarchs. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. That was 400 years before. In fact, they had been in bondage for 400 years. So we go back another 100 years to when Abraham first received the promise that everywhere he traveled here in Canaan, the land that he did not know anything about until God said, I just want you to go and I'll show you a place whose builder and maker is God. And everywhere Abraham walked, God said, Abraham, one day this is going to be your descendants. And he still didn't have one son. But all of this promise. And then the same prophecy, the same promise was made to Isaac and then to Jacob. All of the land of Canaan would one day be theirs. They're on the precipice now of doing it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the land here in verse 50 of Numbers 33. The land. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the plain of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying, okay, so this is that Transjordan area just across the Jordan River below them in this great Jordan River Rift Valley, and Jericho's on the other side, on the west side of the Jordan. And so they're still in the plains of Moab when God spoke once again to Moses. And God said, speak unto the children of Israel and say to them, when ye are passed over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then ye shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their pictures, and destroy all their molten images, and quite pull down all their high places. Verse 53, and ye shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land, and dwell therein, for I have given you the land to possess it. All right, so God is already telling them, this is yours for the taking. This is what I promised you all along. Now we're on the precipice of doing it. But God is going to give some instruction, and part of that instruction is going to be, I want you to purify the land when you get there. Now, my mom, who will be 92 in the 1st of December, she's remind me of that. I need to remember my mom's birthday. So, never mind. Connie knows all those things, and apparently I know my mom's birthday. But when they were ready to go in, because my mom, she was reading through her Bible like we do, and she said to me on several occasions, wow, the Old Testament is really bloody. Some of the battles and some of the instructions from God about what to do. And so even when it comes to this, that's part of what God says. Listen, I do not want you to go in there, take it over, and let any of those people continue to live around you. You dispossess them. And we go over to the book of Joshua where the conquest is being cataloged and all of these battles are being written about. And in chapter 10 of Joshua, it says in 12 different verses, utterly destroy them. And that's the kind of thing my mom says, wow, that's really bloody over there. But you know what? It's this group of Canaanite people. And God says, when you go in there, I want you to utterly destroy them, and do not allow the ungodly pagan Canaanite groups to continue to live among you, or they will take away your hearts. They will lead you into additional idolatry. Don't allow any of this stuff to remain. Okay? Some other people, maybe you would say, why would God be so harsh in judgment against those Canaanite people? First of all, does anybody remember who the Canaanites, that group of different kingdoms called the Canaanites, who are they descendants of? Canaan. Really, Canaan. Who are they descendants of from Noah? Ham. Remember, Ham and Canaan were the two that were cursed by God because they mishandled that situation with Noah after the flood was over. And they were judged for that. There was punishment for that. Part of that was a curse upon Canaan. Well, Canaan is the seminal head of the Canaanites. And throughout history, the Canaanites have a record of being one of the most abominable and wicked people. That's the people of this land. And they have had hundreds and hundreds of years to change, and yet they just become more degraded, more wicked. They have all kinds of terrible idolatrous practices that were going on right at this time when Israel's on the precipice of coming in. What were some of the things that the Canaanites practiced in their terrible false religions? Yes. Child sacrifice, infant sacrifice, somehow believing they could appease their gods, these pagan idol gods, by offering their children as sacrifices. Okay, can you think of some other things that they would have done that were abominable practices? Yes, this was a group of people that had incorporated into their pagan idolatrous worship all kinds of hysteria, as well as temple prostitutes and all kinds of pagan idolatrous practices, including bloodletting and all kinds of things short of human sacrifice, but which they also did. Okay, so that's the kind of thing God said, I do not want you to go in there. We read it. What were some of the things God said? I want you to utterly destroy that. When it said he wanted them to be dispossessed, well, that's just like what we think of. If they possessed it, that means they're there. They need to be dispossessed. They need to be driven out or wiped out, utterly destroyed. Do not allow those people to continue to live among you. All right? Yes. That's what it said. Yes, good. That's the other thing. Specifically, tear down those molten images, right? You saw that in verse 52. And destroy all their molten images. Good. What else? Yeah, they're pictures. Now, this wouldn't be so much painting type pictures as it would be carvings. On trees, they would maybe inscribe or carve a picture. They would maybe do that on stonework. And that's part of what totally destroy anything like that. Don't let that pagan influence be anywhere around you or your children. All right, good. Anything else? Yes, these high places. I stumbled over it when I read it, but it says there at the end of verse 52, quite plucked down. It just really means absolutely one of the first things you do is go to those high places, and almost on every high hill or high mountain, they would have these groves, these idolatrous worship centers, even if they were out in the open. But he said, when you come to those things, immediately, first thing you do is pull them down, destroy them, burn them up. Okay? We're going to look at it momentarily on discussing the land assignments to the different tribes. There were a couple of tribes who did not do what they were supposed to do in the conquest. And they allowed some of these Canaanite tribes to continue to be around them. Does anybody remember what was the name of the tribe that was unable to dislodge their Canaanite neighbors? And for hundreds of years, those Canaanites continued to be a problem. So much so that this tribe decided to move completely away. because they couldn't handle the pagan Canaanites that lived near them. Anybody know what tribe that was? The tribe of Dan. Who said that? Good job, Dennis. I thought you might say the tribe of Dennis. But remember the tribe of Dan. Samson was a Danite when he did his judgeship. After that, though, it became so hard, they moved up during the Judges period. They moved all the way to the north. And that's why we talk about the northernmost part being Dan, and the southernmost location in Canaanite territories, Beersheba. And we say it's found out all the way through, right? From Dan to Beersheba, talking about the north and south length of Israel's land. What was the group that the Danites could not win against and finally gave up and let them live kind of next door? The Philistines. Yes, good. The Philistines. The Philistines lived in the Gaza Strip. In fact, that's what Palestine, the whole issue of Palestine, right? They call it Palestine. The Romans called it that, named after the Philistines. And it was kind of done that way just to be a dishonor to the Jewish people, because the province of Rome was Judea. But rather than call it Judea so much, they called it Palestine. And that's why there's still this debate here, 2,000 years later, about it being Palestinian land, when really there has never been a Palestine. And even during the Arab period, it wasn't called that. Okay, another topic for a different time. But my point is this. What other city, by the way, was not, it was kind of a city-state kingdom that was never defeated until the monarchy period? That's, by the way, that's when the Philistines were defeated finally, too. Anybody know what city David conquered because it had been there for over 300 years as a Canaanite stronghold? The Jebusites in Jerusalem. Okay? So, right from the beginning, God said, go in there and utterly destroy them and wipe out all evidence of their pagan practices. Otherwise, you will go after them. And yet, here we're talking about 300 years after the conquest, and you've still got the Philistines, you've still got the Jebusites, and pockets where other Canaanites continue to live. All right. I'm just showing you that God's plan to take the land was for them to not have any pagan influence around them. They were to be separated unto God. They were to possess the land that God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And yet, with a half-hearted effort, and that's probably not fair. They do an amazing job with God's guidance, conquering when they go in the book of Joshua and Judges, all of that. But sometimes they got enough. They had these land grants, as we'll talk about in a moment, and the tribes possessed those territories. And then after they possessed it, maybe there was a stronghold of Canaanite areas, and they just said, you know what, we're okay. And they got kind of apathetic about the whole thing and wouldn't go any further. And it ended up every time costing them. All right, so we read about this promise of the land and what to do once they got in there. They were to purify the land. Okay, the next thought, jump down to verse 54 with the task ahead of them, because God's going to spell it out. And ye shall divide the land by lot for inheritance among your families. And to the more ye shall give the more inheritance, and to the fewer ye shall give less inheritance. Every man's inheritance shall be in the place where his lot falleth. According to the tribes of your fathers ye shall inherit. But if ye shall not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall come to pass that those which ye let remain, of them shall be pricks in your eyes, and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. Moreover, it shall come to pass that I shall do unto you as I thought to do unto them. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this possession stage. God tells Moses, you tell the people, when they go in, they need to do it this way. And in verse 54, he says, I want you to divide the area, the land, by lot. You know, one of the things that the 12 spies that went in 40 years earlier did, they had mapped out the entire land. They had cities as landmarks. They had bodies of water like the Dead Sea or the Jordan River as boundaries. They had talked about the Great Sea, the Mediterranean. They talked about mountains. So one thing that they did do when they had gone in for the 30 days to walk through the whole land, they had mapped it out. They actually knew where all kinds of cities and landmarks were. Now, that was something that over a 40-year period of wandering, they also learned more about. But on the basis of that, Moses, under God's direction, had started making these lines of inheritance where the different tribes would be assigned. How many tribes will actually go into Canaan to occupy it? Actually, 9.5. I tricked you. Yeah, I wasn't clear. Because half of which tribe? Okay, who's Manasseh? He's one of Joseph's sons, grandson of Jacob. But do you know in Genesis 49, who was the other son of Joseph, by the way? Manasseh and Ephraim. Very good. In Genesis 49, Jacob will actually, do you remember when the children come to his knees and he crosses his hands and says this one will be the primary one, this will be the lesser, and Joseph tried to correct him and said, no, he's the oldest, you know, and Jacob did it exactly the other way and gave the promise to Manasseh, who was the younger. But he also at that time, that was an adoption process. Jacob actually adopted the two sons of Joseph for the inheritance. And so why? How come Manasseh and Ephraim, the grandsons, get the same allotment of a blessing as the other 10? Okay, Janice said Joseph was his favorite. More than that. No, that's a good thought. Yes, April. To Rachel, yes. He was the firstborn to Rachel, the favorite wife, but it's even more than that. Because what did he, by honoring Joseph this way, what did he basically consider Joseph? Yeah, he considered him to be the primogeniture. Write that down. No. That just means he's the one who's going to get the blessing of a double portion. Now, who's the oldest? Reuben is the oldest son born to Leah and the firstborn. But when you get to Genesis 49, before Jacob dies, he's given all these blessings to all of his sons. He rejects Reuben because of sinful practice of Reuben that really upset Jacob. And so he did not give him the birthright option. He rejected him. And he goes all the way down to number 10, Joseph, and gives the birthright. That's basically what's going on. And he gets a double blessing. And that's why there are two tribes of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim. All right. So why did we say 9.5 go in to occupy Canaan? Okay, good. After they defeated Sihon and Og in the Amorite territories, Moab on the east side of the Jordan River, the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, they come to Moses, and it turns out half the tribe of Manasseh. And they say to Moses, what? Listen, we love it over here. We'd really like to just have our inheritance portioned out for us to stay on this side of the Jordan River. What was Moses' first reaction to that? Oh, no, he got really mad. Why? Moses thought they're trying to get out of fighting. They don't want to go in over there where the hard fighting is going to be with the Canaanites. They just want to stay over here. And right away they reassured him, oh, absolutely not. We will go in and fight with our brothers. We will help them occupy the land. But when it's all over, we'd like to settle over here. And that is what was granted. So we talk about 9.5 tribes going into the land of promise, with half the tribe of Manasseh, which is the largest tribe numerically, half the tribe living on the west side of the Jordan, half of the tribe living on the east side of the Jordan. All right? Which tribe did not get a land grant? Karen? Yeah, the Levites, right? The Levites are not given a huge portion of land as part of their inheritance, but they are given cities, Levitical cities, priestly cities among all of the tribes. And then in each of those cities, each of them are given a portion of land that's part of their, they could grow crops and things, but the Levites, because they were priests, and because they were going to get the benefit of offerings and things like that given to God, part of those offerings were given to the priests for their perfunctory work of the rituals. And so they were not given land. Okay. I don't want to get too deep into that except to say that God apportioned a piece of land, a piece of property, significant areas in some cases, to the different tribes. What did we read was the criteria for the amount of land a tribe would get? Yeah, good. Based upon the size, if they were a very big tribe, they would get a bigger portion of land. If it was a smaller tribe, they would get a smaller portion of land. Anybody know who turned out to be some of the smaller tribes that really got a kind of a small piece of the huge promised land? You know what the two smallest tribes were? Benjamin, very good. Of course, Benjamin is the youngest, but it turns out that there are fewer descendants of Benjamin by the time we get to the conquest. But Benjamin is a critical one, because it's right on the border of Jerusalem and where Judah will be. So Judah is one of the bigger tribes, bigger portion of land, and Benjamin is close to them. In many instances, Benjamin will end up aligning with the tribe of Judah, even after the northern kingdom is defeated. Okay? What was the other smaller tribe that was given a smaller portion? It's kind of an oblong section right in the middle of Judah. Good. Simeon. All right. If you look at a map, you'll see Simeon down around Beersheba. There's kind of just a land grant that's theirs, but the other tribes, based on size, were given larger portions. And by the way, Dan was another smaller group, and they were the ones that were over by the Philistines and couldn't dispossess the Philistines. Okay, so God sovereignly divides this land with Moses helping out, and as we read through the rest of Numbers, I mean, there's talking about cities of refuge and all kinds of amazing things. Very illuminated and far-sighted plan of justice that God imposes upon this settlement period. Okay, for sake of time, let's just jump down to chapter 34 and look at verse 13. I just want to mention a couple things. And Moses commanded the children of Israel, saying, "This is the land which ye shall inherit by lot, which the Lord commanded to give unto thee, to the 9 tribes and the half-tribe." There it is. "For the tribe of the children of Reuben, according to the house of their fathers, and the tribe of the children of Gad, according to the house of their fathers, and have received their inheritance. Half the tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance. These 2 tribes and the half-tribe have received their inheritance on this side Jordan, near Jericho, eastward, toward the sun rising." Okay, we just talked all the way through that section. But God is initiating this plan as illustrated in even the 2.5 tribes already receiving their inheritance. This modeled for all of the children of Israel what it was going to be like. And so Reuben in the north, Manasseh in the north, and then Reuben and then Gad are all going to have a very bountiful and beautiful portion of land. What was the reason the 2.5 tribes said, "We'd like to stay over here. Yeah, we'll go fight, but after it's all over, we want to stay on this side"? Do you remember what they said it was good for? Karen? Yes. It was good because it was a really well-watered area, and it was good for their livestock. That's what they directly said. Without even knowing what the other side might look like, they said, "This is really good for flocks and for herds. We'd like to stay over here." And again, after explaining why their rationale, Moses said, "Okay, as long as you help your brothers win on that side of the Jordan," and they do an honorable job in that. But now everybody gets an idea of, wow, we're going to get some wonderful land grants. God, by lot, is going to give us a portion of those Canaanite lands, some of which are going to be flowing with milk and honey, right? That's the land all along they've been promised. But because of disobedience, their lapse of faith, they didn't do it 40 years earlier. Who are the 3 people at this point? We didn't read it here in Numbers, but a couple chapters earlier, Aaron is going to pass away. So who are the 3 people who are still alive that were over 20 years of age from that original group that God said they're all going to die because of they rejected the chance to occupy it? Okay, Caleb, Joshua, and Moses. And Moses is not going to go in either. He's going to die on this side of the Jordan after getting up on Jebel Musa, as it's called, the mountain of Moses, Mount Nebo. And from that high point on the Transjordan, he could see the entire land, all the way up to Mount Hermon, all the way down to the southern Negev. He could see, on a clear day, he could see all the way over to the Mediterranean. And so he could see the entire expanse of the land of promise, but he was unable to go there because of what we looked at last week with his disobedience on smiting the rock. Okay, so God had this most detailed and amazing plan. It's a prize. It's been unclaimed, but it's right there before them. All they have to do is obey. And they're going to know before they ever go in and conquer what their land is going to look like, what their land grant is going to be. Wouldn't that have been something to have gone in to fight, and you were of a certain tribe, like the tribe of Asher, and you're defeating this whole area with all the rest of your Israelite kin, and you're taking over this beautiful valley, the valley of Esdraelon, also known the valley of Jezreel. And you know what other important valley is part of the land of Asher, the breadbasket of Israel? It's the tribe of Asher that is also going to give huge amounts of food down to the kings once the kings get established. David, Solomon, all of them are going to get most of their food from this particular area's, the tribe of this area. Say again? No, okay. I'm not thinking so much a city as a land area, and it's actually up in Galilee. Anybody know what tribe it is? Asher. Okay. But Asher is going to be like one of the bread baskets but can you imagine going in fighting, knowing you're a tribe of Asher and you're in the area that you know this is going to be ours? Come on, boys, let's finish this off. And along the way, they're utterly destroying and tearing down these idols and burning those molten images and just either wiping them out or driving them out. And God's involved all the way. You know, we don't read of hardly any casualties in the conquests, not Israelite casualties. I mean, God's doing things like sending hornets into some of these places, and the hornets are so bad, these people are going to flee, run right out of their walled cities because God sends a plague of hornets in there. Well, it would work for a lot of people. Some people jump off ladders to avoid wasps and hornets. Don't we, Penny? Okay. But I just want to let you think through what a great gift that must have been to start possessing that land. I was going to mention a minute ago with Asher, there's the valley of Esdraelon or Jezreel. It's also the valley of Armageddon, which is a very fertile part of Israel. But it's there. Okay, so God points out the land. He points out the task before them. Go in and drive them out. It's yours for the taking. And by the way, I'll tell you where you're going to live after you take it. And they divide the land. You know, our time's up. I've got to let you go. But this is, God can still do these kinds of things in a miraculous way as necessary to honor his people if we just have the faith to live in obedience and claim it and take it. Open it up. That's a present he's given to you. All right? Got to go. God bless. Have a great day. See you. Hurry over there. Don't let Pastor know we were late. Everybody stagger in like you're looking at your watch like we've been waiting in the hallway for hours. Okay, minutes.